everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Modern Work Mondays for Retail. I am your host, Nolan Wheeler, and with always, I have
Jeff Strasser with Microsoft. How are you doing, Nolan?
I'm doing good, man. We've been talking some technical conversations on the previous videos, but we thought today let's revisit something that Ron Thurston brought up, which was the true cost of turnover and the cost of training. It's one thing to, I'm going to date myself, put the VCR tape into the TV and show the cashier who's training how to go through that program with some really, really bad videography. It's another thing for them to be a buzzwing cashier that's never going to look into that book for the jalapeno code. So talk to me about your view on, especially the technology side of the true cost of turnover and training.
You kind of got me on the VCR. My very first job was retail at public supermarkets, and I was a bagger and bringing carts in from the parking lot and so on. And absolutely remember, I can picture the room right now, and it was a long time ago, watching VCR tapes on video for my training. That has stuck with me, and it still sticks with me around how to bag groceries. That has served me really well in my life. So well done, Publix, on your training. And to that point, the cost of, well, one, we know turnover in retail is incredibly high. It ranges in retail in some of the research that I've read between 60 and 130%, depending on on the type of retailer. Convenience stores, grocery, obviously being higher than maybe apparel and fashion, and probably the higher end you go, but it's significant. Had many conversations with customers around what is the cost. We had a conversation recently with Ron Thurston, and I believe we covered this topic. I was looking at some research from Indeed.com, and their estimate is just over $10,000 per employee. And so, like that, the cost is significant, and the tools exist to, one, accelerate onboarding. There was a customer I had worked with in the restaurant sector that they had such a challenge in hiring and onboarding. And yes, turnover was a problem, but also just the speed and the pace to hire people, right? And how quickly you can respond to applications and make offers and get them hired and onboarded, because potential employees in that segment are going to go to the employer that can pay them first. So whoever gets them on the schedule and pays them first is probably the one who's going to win that employee, provided the compensation's in the same ballpark. So the costs are significant, and providing employees the experience and the tools to do their jobs well and avoid frustration and feel prepared and confident and credible in their interactions with customers and feel like they're empowered to actually do good work. In fact, our own at Microsoft, our own Work Trend Index report has data, and I can't remember off the top of my head the exact number, but it's somewhere in the 60-something% range of employees that have stated the tools and technologies their employers give them to do their job will affect their longevity in those roles and their satisfaction with their roles. And so the same thing exists in retail, and to make those employees feel confident, feel capable, feel like they're helping people. Yes, compensation, career paths absolutely matter, but you're going to lose people right away if there's an immediate, frustration in the jobs they're doing. So there's opportunity to improve that from hiring, onboarding, and training to scheduling, retention, to paying benefits, and ultimately into a career path.
Yeah, and if you think about like that first day, especially when you think about true, real frontline work, like training a bagger, a cashier, or a clerk, or whatever. I mean, there's going to be minimum amounts of training regardless of the role, just from a health and safety perspective, and from company values and customer expectations, interacting with customers. There's always going to be something like that. So, and it's when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm not trying to drive this into an AI conversation, but it is one of the better use cases for AI in terms of and I teased about the VHS tape, but there was also the evolution into a digital experience, and then like the terrible multi-choice question prompt at the end of the video to see if you were listening and whatnot. Truly not only for the initial onboarding of agentic AI, but then, imagine putting a headset on a cashier for the first 2 months and the ability to just say, what's a jalapeno code? And for it to just spit back the 4-digit code versus, we've all been there in the store flipping the book that looks like it's a decade old, and the only updates that have been made is like whiteout and post-it notes.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great one. And because that, time to work through that customer is gonna dictate staffing, because the faster we're able to check out customers, ultimately the fewer employees we're going to need on shift, because we're going to work through the same volume. Those are great opportunities. Ideally, we get away from, or we can speed that even further, right? If I say, hey, either through headset scenario, or even ultimately at some point through computer vision, where small low-cost cameras that are sitting somewhere in that checkout stand that can identify the item and automatically enter the code, essentially, right? It pops up, says identifies a jalapeno, automatically kind of keys that in, and then you scan or you enter the quantity or whatever the situation is. A lot of great opportunity there as well, to help technology onboard people faster, make them more confident. Right? There's nothing more frustrating, I'm sure, for somebody who's checking out a customer in grocery, flipping through that book, being frustrated, feeling like they're not meeting the needs of their customer. It's it can be demoralizing and embarrassing, and it's not as efficient for the business.
Yeah, I mean, what a great comment. Maybe we'll close on that comment. You talk about demoralizing, like you really do see in frontline the frustration of someone without those tools, and whether it's as simple as somebody not knowing a produce code. I mean, every once in a while, it's like they try, and it's like, these are free today, right? Or they just do produce 25 cents, which is just an immediate paper shrink moment for the retailer. It's really interesting to think about that close with that. That's beautiful. I love that. Like close with that whole embarrassment factor.
Yeah. I remember back to my grocery my bagging days, right? I remember being an embarrassed retail employee. I remember bagging somebody's grocery, and there was a glass jar of like raspberry jam that of course fell out of the bag or out of the cart onto the floor and everywhere. I mean, just it wasn't pretty. And so while that was more of a error on my part, but it's the same scenario. Like, you don't want to be standing there embarrassed in front of your customers, especially like I know certainly when I go to the grocery store, like a lot of younger employees, right? Whether they're high schoolers or, and not all of them, but like for me, that was my first job. I was 14 years old. I was like mortified when that happened, and it didn't make me feel good. And so the more you can avoid that and build confidence, it just builds the employee's commitment to that business when they feel like they're well supported. And now, like with the all these trainings going mobile and things like that, you can deliver more training and more information more quickly. Easier to do those like knowledge checks and validations that yes, there's a baseline level of knowledge because they watch this training, as they move from role to role as well. So it gives people more momentum within their roles, within their career, to move from, like it was the case many years ago, from bagger to cashier to stocker to other roles, and I can learn as I go, and it doesn't require me to take 3 hours and go watch more VHS tapes, thankfully.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I mean, it's a good segue, but it wasn't even planned. But it's a good segue into the next call we're doing next week, which is it was Father's Day recently, and I'm so prepared as always. So I decided to go get my dad something half an hour before I was supposed to show up for brunch, and I tried to go buy a Ring doorbell. So there's the segue into customer and associate interactivity, and unfortunately some embarrassment. So we'll pick up where we left off.
Can't wait to hear about it.
Thanks, dude. Have a good week.